Hi, everybody. I'm Faith Moore, and this is Princess State of Mind, the show where we talk about fiction, fairy tales, and the fairer sex. And today we're going to do something a little different, which is that we're going to talk not about princesses and fairy tales necessarily, but we're going to talk, or I'm going to talk about social media. But before I do that, I just want to remind you that my book, Saving Cinderella: What Feminists Get Wrong About Disney Princesses and How to Set It Right, is now not only a paperback, not only an ebook, but also an audiobook narrated by me. So you can pick that up. There's a link in the description of this video. It's also on Amazon and Audible, and you can find it there. And also just another quick reminder that if you have read or listened to the book and you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate a review on Amazon or on Goodreads. Those reviews help people see it. It shows up more regularly in the kind of search boxes and things like that if it has more reviews. So just like press the number of stars that you think it was is fine, or just give it like a 1 or 2 sentences is fine, or lots of sentences if you want. But a review would be really helpful if you've read it and enjoyed the book. So thank you. Okay, so today I want to talk about my rules for being a princess or a prince on social media. And the reason that I am saying it that way is because I want to talk not necessarily about like Twitter or Facebook etiquette, although I am going to talk about etiquette, but that usually implies that these are rules for how to be nice to other people. And I definitely do want you to be nice to other people, and that's important. But I think, but what I really want to talk about is how social media is making us feel as individuals, and how we can maybe shift the narrative on that. So it's really about how you can be your best self and sort of fulfill your best purpose, which is kind of what a fairy tale princess's job is, right? She's a symbolic representation of sort of feminine perfection. And so then, but you don't have to be a woman to listen to this episode, and these are not gender specific. But this idea of, you are supposed to be this person, that there's the person that you were meant to be. And sometimes when for example, when we're on social media, we maybe are not living that out. And that is bad for us, not just for the people that we're interacting with. So I kind of want to talk about what the deal is with social media, whether it's good, whether it's bad, and some rules that I think are helpful that you might think are helpful too. So I first feel that I must admit to you that I have become slightly obsessed with Twitter. Not necessarily checking it all the time, although I have been known to do that. But just kind of like Twitter as a phenomenon. And this goes for all social media, but Twitter is sort of my favorite version of social media for a couple reasons, and it is Twitter that has kind of captured my interest. And I think the reason that I'm so obsessed with it is that it's meant to be, all of social media is meant to be this vehicle for connecting people from all over the world with all different life experiences and viewpoints in dialogue with one another. And except that really in real life, the whole thing sort of resembles like a classroom full of 2-year-olds who skip nap or something, right? Everybody's just cranky and mad and just sort of spewing their, like, whatever comes into their heads at each other. And it sort of often does not, in fact, resemble a place for dialogue, right? And to me, the part of it that is strange is not, to me, it is not strange at all that people are rude and offensive, because there are rude and offensive people in the world, right? Like anytime you put a large number of people together in a space, even a cyberspace, there are going to be people who are rude and offensive. That's just the way it is. What fascinates me is that otherwise kind, thoughtful, respectful, nice people become rude and offensive on social media. And I kind of find that fascinating. And it's kind of odd to me, because logic would tell us that if you are a kind and respectful person, that you would continue to be kind and respectful in whichever area of life that you are in. And some people really do do that even on social media. But a lot of people become these completely different and kind of um, less positive versions of themselves when they log on to Twitter or Facebook or whatever social media they prefer. And I find that kind of fascinating in a sort of sad, negative way. Um, I guess it's kind of inevitable in the sense that we're all kind of hiding behind our computer screens, and we're not likely to see each other in real life. And this is kind of why I find Twitter to be more fascinating, because I think of Facebook as more like a place where you actually connect with people that you know in real life, or even, or maybe like that you used to know in real life. It's kind of that sort of thing. Your family might be on there or whatever. Whereas Twitter is the place where you really connect with people that you've never met and you probably aren't going to meet except for a few instances, right? So on Twitter, people really can kind of hide behind their computer screens, even if their account isn't anonymous and their avatar is their actual face. Like you're not going to bump into these people like in the break room or in the line for drop off at school, like, and then you're going to have to sort of somehow defend the fact that you just called them a horrible name or whatever, right? So we're all kind of hiding behind our screens. And so I guess it kind of makes sense that we would then sort of act in ways that we wouldn't necessarily act when we are just face to face with someone, because it's kind of, you don't actually have to deal with their emotional reaction, right? You don't have to deal with their actual anger or their actual hurt. But still, the fact that we want to anger and hurt people is kind of worth exploring, right? But I think that another thing about it is that, like, when you're like in the shower or somewhere and you start having a sort of dialogue with someone where like something has happened in real life, like maybe your boss said something rude to you, and in real life you just said like, oh, I'm sorry, sir, and you got to work on whatever you were supposed to do. But now you're in the shower and you're kind of thinking it through and you're pretending like you said all of the things that you wish you kind of could say to your boss or to whoever it was, or that other mom at the playground who was so rude or whatever. And you're going back and forth, and of course in the shower you win the argument and you feel so much better. And I feel like Twitter is kind of like that, because we feel somehow empowered to say these things that we wouldn't ordinarily say. And a lot of times we're dealing with people who maybe we can best in a verbal argument, as opposed to our boss or the mom at the playground, who maybe could match us, point for point or whatever. So it's kind of like a shower argument, except that the other person is really there. And so they actually do have to take the brunt of your frustration or whatever. But it doesn't feel like they're there because you can't see them, right? And this kind of brings me to this other point, which is that this idea of like owning people or winning these arguments, it feels good. It does, right? It feels good to like win an argument and know that you won, and then of course, then there's all these other people that come and they like it or they retweet it, and you feel validated, right? In the way that you think that you would feel when you're having that shower argument, and you just sort of wish, oh, I wish it had gone like that. I wish I had said that because I would feel so good. I would have such a big ego boost for feeling that way, because it is, I now feel powerful. And it's kind of like this primal like right of dominance, right? That you kind of like, you've ripped someone apart and now you win, yay you. Right. But I actually think that this is bad for us. Like not even this is bad for us as a society. I mean, it is like, it's not good if our society's primary mode of being is to try to rip each other to shreds and not listen to each other at all. That doesn't seem useful. And it sounds like, what we moms are always, and parents are always sort of counseling their kids not to do, right? To talk about it, don't hit each other, right? That kind of thing. So it's not good as a society if everybody starts behaving in this way, but it's also not good for us as individuals, because being consumed with rage is bad, right? Like it is not good to be going around angry. all the time. And it is not good to be sort of sitting around like stewing about what somebody just tweeted at you and trying to think of the very best response to really get them. Like when you could be thinking about something else that's way more interesting and less fraught, right? So that that is not good for us as individuals. And also like caring so much about what's going on social media as opposed to with our real life interpersonal interactions is also not good, right? It's not good to be sort of obsessing about something that ultimately is not actually our real life. And so I think even though it feels good, that isn't actually a helpful indicator about whether or not it is good for us as individuals to do it. So that's kind of where I have kind of come to my obsession about Twitter and social media in general is kind of like the ways in which we act, the way we act in these ways that are not really the way we would normally act, and then it becomes so important to us, but then it's also really negative for us, right? So, but what I have to say is not negative, because even though social media can become a sort of cesspool of like everybody's weird baser instincts, I actually think that Twitter and social media in general can be used for good. And I think that that is probably what it was intended to be used for, but who cares? I think that it can be used now for good. And actually, for me, it is now a wonderful place, if it's a place at all, to be. But the reason for that, there are two reasons. One is I set some rules for myself, and I'm going to tell you about what they are. So I set some rules for myself, but also it's because of you guys, the people that I interact with on Twitter, and those two things go hand in hand because part of setting rules is to figure out who you're going to interact with. But I mean, it is currently my experience on Twitter that like if I say something and somebody attacks me, as people are wont to do, I mean, like a bunch of you suddenly come out of the woodwork and like defend me, which is amazing and wonderful. And like everybody needs people like that in their lives, and everybody's social media experience should be like that too. But I know that it isn't for everyone. So I had to set myself some rules because I really didn't like the way that I was being and on social media and the way that it was making me feel. I didn't like going away and thinking like, oh, how could that person have, said that is about me, that is so not true. I need everyone to know that it's not true. I need to think of the best thing to say. I need to really kind of own this person so everybody knows that like, I'm not really whatever it is that they said I was. I was like thinking about it all the time when I wasn't even sitting at my computer. And I just realized like, this is bad. I definitely don't want this to be a part of my life. And, social media ultimately ultimately it's like a form of entertainment and it's a form of communication, but it shouldn't be the sort of your main source of human interaction. It shouldn't be a place where, you invest all of this emotional time and energy, right? You should be saving all of that for your actual real life communication with people. And so I sort of was like, wow, this is really bad. So I have some choices. I can either quit this entirely, which felt like, okay, I will do that if I have to do that. But I would like to try not to because, when people like me, being like a freelance writer and somebody who's trying to kind of gain a platform, social media is really helpful for that. And especially like if you're trying to publish a book or get published in a magazine or a newspaper, people look to see if you have a following on social media. So like quitting would be kind of unhelpful for me professionally. So I was like, all right, so I can't quit unless I really have to. So let me make some rules for myself and see how that goes. And so I did. But before I was doing, so I did, and I've been living by those rules for a while now, and I feel like it's been really, really successful. And the thing that I just have to keep working on is not checking it so frequently. It's addictive. I think, it's addictive for most people, I think, and people who sort of can get sort of obsessed with things like I can, it can be really addictive for. And so I sort of also have to set rules about how often to be on it. And that's not something I'm necessarily going to talk about today, but I think that is a part that is still kind of negative for me. But the rest of it has become really positive. So before I was going to do this show, I put out a little Twitter poll and I asked all of you, do you have rules for yourself for interacting on Twitter? And boy, do you. A little over 1,500 people responded to the poll, and 67% said that they do have rules for themselves, and 33% said that they didn't. So and then I asked people to, if they wanted to tell me what their rules actually were. And I had so many people, thank you to all of you that replied. I had so many people telling me what their rules were, and some really interesting trends came out. I would say like a very small percentage of people said that their rules were to say whatever they wanted. Right. So like they had rules, and the rules were to just be as rude and nasty as they felt like. But most of the people who responded, so most of that 67%, had sort of clearly thought out rules. I think the most common one, which really interested me, because this is not my experience on Twitter about like, it's not my experience in terms of who I interact with and what they have to say, is lots of people said they never talk about religion or politics, which is like really good dinner party etiquette, right? If you don't know who you're talking to. But a lot of people have that on Twitter as well. A lot of people said that they try to act like they do in real life. So however you are when you're acting with actual human beings face to face, people try to be that way on social media. There was a big strain of people saying that they try not to say anything that a potential employer wouldn't want to see, which makes a lot of sense because we have all these examples now of people's past tweets coming back to bite them, right? So people said that, and there was sort of think before you tweet. A lot of people talked about like typing something and then saving it in drafts and coming back and sort of realizing they don't want to say that. So sort of like taking time. And then there were people who talked about like don't insult people's like appearance, or don't insult people in general. Sort of talk about ideas and that kind of thing. So there were a lot of really interesting rules. You can go on my Twitter. I'm at Faith K Moore. You can go and find that and read all the comments and the replies if you want. But I thought it was really interesting that like a lot of people do have rules. And if you have rules, awesome. And I'm going to tell you mine in a second. And if you don't have rules, you should think about whether you want some. So I'm going to give my five rules right now. And I'm going to talk a little bit about each one. And again, these are rules for how to be a princess or a prince on social media, meaning they are rules for how you treat other people, because that's really important, but also for how you feel the most positive in terms of your experience, so that you are not upset and angry all the time. And it will help you to also be kind to other people as well, right? But I think sometimes it's sort of like, you need to behave better on social media because those are real people. And that is totally true. But also you need to behave better on social media because you are a real person, and it is not benefiting you in any way to behave these ways, right? So these are my 5 rules for how to be a princess or a prince on social media. Okay, number 1, assume that everyone you interact with is a human being. So this is kind of obvious, right? We know intellectually that most people are people. Maybe there are some bots, right? But most of the people that you accuse of being bots are actually also people. And so what does this mean? What does it mean that they're people? Well, one thing it means is they are not props for you to use in order to display how awesome you are, or to get likes and retweets, etc. I have said this before, and I'm not really going to go into this now, but I feel this way about our children, right? Our children are also not props. They are human beings. So I don't think, and I know this is controversial, but I don't think that we should be sharing photos of our children on social media, or even like making jokes about the things that they say or the things that they do, because that we do that just so that other people can like it or retweet it or whatever, and we get this ego boost, right? And it's the same thing about regular people, right? It is a person putting their thoughts out into the world is not a prop for you to to sort of use that and say like, haha, look how stupid this is. Of course, we can like and retweet and have things to say about people's ideas and the things that they say, and some things are really funny, and sometimes you can make a joke about something that wasn't meant to be a joke, and that's all, that's all fine. We might do that in real life, right? But this thing where like, you see somebody's picture of themselves in their prom dress and you think they're fat, and so you retweet it with a joke about fat people, like that's a real person, and you're just using that for your own personal gain, and like that's not cool, right? The other thing about assuming that everybody is real is that you should be kind and polite and respectful, just the way that you should be in real life. And if you're not like this in real life, you should be, right? Like this whole thing of like, I behave the way I behave in real life, and in real life, I also yell at people and call them names and am super rude. Well, you shouldn't do that. Not just for them, it's awful for them, but also for you. Because why are you sitting around in your negativity trying to think of how stupid everybody is all the time? And why are you putting out this negativity in the world so that you can't form actual connections with human beings, right? That doesn't seem good. And that doesn't seem good for you either, right? So if you're not kind and polite and respectful in real life, you should be. And if you are, you should also be on social media. This is all true, even if the person or people that you're interacting with are not acting like you are a human being. Because if they're not following these rules, that has nothing to do with you. You can't control them. You're never, ever going to be able to control another person, not ever. So the only person you can control is yourself, and you can behave in this way. Remember, this is about you, not them. You will feel better if you are kind, polite, and respectful. If someone else is not being kind and polite and respectful, then you can feel bad for them because obviously they're having a pretty hard time, right? So it's not like, oh, but they were rude to me, so I get to be rude to them. No, we are not two. We are not four. We are adult humans, and we can be better, right? So that's one thing. Another facet of treating people as if they were human beings, which they are, is like, don't flirt with people unless you actually want to have a relationship with them. And if you actually want to have a relationship with them, don't flirt with them on Twitter or Facebook or somewhere where everyone else can see. That's weird. Okay? Like, and definitely don't flirt with people at all if you are married or in a relationship or hoping to be in a relationship with somebody else, right? It's not a free for all. It's not a free pass, right? Just because we're behind our screens, that doesn't mean that we get to go, because in real life, I would assume that you don't go up to strangers and like comment on their physical appearance, unless you're trying to ask them out on a date or something. I mean, maybe you do and you should stop. But, again, like it isn't helpful to flirt with someone that you have no intention of trying to start a relationship with. And it certainly isn't helpful to you if you are flirting with someone and you're married or in a relationship or hoping to be in a relationship, right? So that is weird. That's not good. Also, don't say weird things about people's physical appearance or send creepy direct messages or, messages to people. Don't do any of that stuff. Just because they can't see you, just because they don't know who you are and can't find you, doesn't mean you should act like a total jerk, right? So that's one thing. Like, be respectful, right? Kind, polite, and respectful. Be respectful of people. You don't get to sort of like spew all of your like sort of base urges into the lap of somebody else just because they can't see you. That's not nice, right? So don't do that. They're a real human. They have to deal with your icky statements, right? So don't do that. Okay. Also, this is all still part of number one. Don't get sucked into people's obsessive need for attention. People use social media to sort of like fish for compliments, right? And they'll post like, maybe a woman posts a picture of herself and says like, oh, I just look so ugly, right? When she's like a bombshell or whatever, especially if you're a guy, like steer clear of that, right? That person is reaching out to a bunch of strangers for help in a way that is not productive, right? You can offer to pray for that person. You can say hello, how are you doing today to that person? You can whatever, but you should not be on there being like, oh no, honey, you're beautiful, right? No, it doesn't. There is no number of oh honey, you're beautifuls that will make that person feel beautiful if they don't feel beautiful. That's just the way that it is. And you shouldn't get sucked into that for your own sake and for theirs. None of this is about being like holier than thou. It's all just about you and how you feel about yourself and your interactions with other people. But it's also good for the other people too, to not be creepy, right? Okay, so that was number one. Number two, this is an important one. When engaged in a debate, critique the ideas, not the person. Okay, we talk about this a lot, right? It's out there. I didn't like make this up by myself, obviously. But we all fail at this sometimes, I think. Maybe not all. If you don't, sorry, don't send me a letter. But, personally, I will debate someone I disagree with all day long and enjoy it. I am happy to talk about, whatever you want, even if you love Brave and Merida. But whatever. I will debate you about abortion. I will debate you about Disney movies. I will debate you about whatever you want, right up until the moment when you start to attack me as a person and not the things that I'm saying. Right? If you want to say that you think abortion is healthcare and you want to talk to me about that because I'm pro-life, fine, let's talk about it. But the minute you call me, a stupid idiot or whatever, or something worse, then I'm sorry, but that is not what we're here to talk about. I know that I'm not a stupid idiot or whatever. I don't need to debate that with you. Or if I am someone, I'm not, but if many people are, if I was somebody that actually does think I'm a stupid idiot, I don't need to debate that with you either. I need to talk to my therapist, right? So there's no point, right? That's not a debate. We don't need to debate whether people are dumb or ugly or race. I mean, we don't need to debate people's attributes, right? So, and this is the other thing, it isn't weak to end a debate when someone starts going after your personal self. I think that some people feel like I have to win this debate, otherwise this awful person who's calling me this awful name is gonna win, right? We need to shift, I think, the purpose of a debate in our minds from winning and owning to having an interesting dialogue, which again, like I was saying earlier, it's not as fun. It's not as fun to think of this as like, oh, I'm going to actually listen to this person and see what they have to say. And maybe they'll even change my mind, or maybe, they'll say something that I haven't heard before, maybe. That is not as fun as I'm going to pound this person into the ground until, even if they don't actually agree with me, they have nothing left to say and therefore I win. Yay. That's way more fun, but less positive and helpful for us, right? So, and if it becomes about the people rather than the ideas, then it's definitely not an interesting intellectual dialogue, right? Here's something that's important to understand. You are not being like slandered or whatever if somebody is saying something about you. So you actually don't have to prove that that isn't true about you. So like, if somebody says, you are, you're a philanderer, right? Like someone just says that to you, this isn't actually a news show. You aren't actually a public figure unless you are. You aren't actually, being watched by millions of people. So you don't actually have to defend yourself against personal attack. You can just explain that you have a rule that you only interact with ideas and not personal attacks. And this rule has now been broken. And so you just say that politely, and then you don't respond ever again in that conversation, which is really, really hard. Really hard, right? It is really hard not to defend yourself when someone is attacking you and saying something not true about you. But that person is never going to stop. They're never going to believe you. They're never going to say, oh, I'm sorry, you're right. You're not whatever I called you. Or, I've totally changed my mind. I'm never going to do that again. That's just never going to happen. Somebody who goes around calling people horrible names is going to keep going around calling people horrible names. This isn't about them. It's about you and you feeling better. And if you just, for 1 second, this is my experience anyway, for 1 second, you'll feel like, oh, I really want to own this person. But if you turn it off and you walk away, it won't matter to you anymore. The only way that it will matter to you is if you keep going back and forth with this person, trying to prove that you're not the horrible person they say you are. That isn't fun. I mean, it feels fun, but it isn't good, right? It's not good for you and your mental state. So just backing away, it's not weak. It's not, you're not you haven't been sort of like slandered or whatever, because this isn't the newspaper. Nobody cares. This is just you dealing with a weirdo, right? That you are never going to meet in real life, presumably. So get out of it. Just get out. Debate ideas. Don't debate whether or not you are anything at all, right? Critique ideas, not people. And if someone else starts critiquing you, get out of it. Just get out. Hard, but worthwhile, right? Okay, number 3. Okay, number 3 is someone else's bad behavior is not an excuse for your own. This is something I say a lot as a mom, but it is true in social media interactions as well. So the fact that someone else is attacking you personally or trying to own you or being rude doesn't mean that now you get to. It's not like, oh, I'm going to really try hard to be polite and be respectful and kind and not call people names, but wow, somebody just called me a name, so all bets are off. I get to say whatever I want. This, by the way, is parenting 101, right? It's like, parents are always saying like, are you Jimmy? Am I Jimmy's mommy? Do you get to act the way Jimmy does just because Jimmy does it? Like, no, right? Right? Just because some other little kid is really badly parented doesn't mean you are going to be really badly parented and behave in that way. No, I didn't raise you that way. You didn't raise yourself this way to be on social media, right? So these are rules that you're setting for yourself. They're not rules you're setting for other people. You can't set rules for other people. You can set rules for your kids, but even then they might not follow them, right? And then you just enforce the consequences. We don't actually have control over anyone else. We don't. Sorry. Like, I'm sorry if you think that you do, but you don't. You only have control over you. And you can only control you, especially in this situation, since you're not even in the same room with these people. You absolutely cannot control them. So, as I keep saying, the point of these rules is to free yourself from stewing over every little Twitter argument, right? So you follow these rules, even if everyone else in the entire world is not following them. You follow them and you will feel better. Ha ha to them. They're not going to feel better. They're not following these rules, right? Right? You follow the rules. Don't worry about those other kids, right? Okay, number 4. Number 4 is use social media to form meaningful connections, right? Like a lot of us, I think, use it as like a source of news or like, just like you scroll through and you're like, haha, that's funny, I'll like it. Or like, whoa, that's crazy, I'll retweet that, and that's fine as long as you're still following all the other rules and being respectful, kind, and polite, right? But what if, and I know this is kind of radical, but what if we actually were sort of seeking out real people that we wanted to interact with because we like them? What? Like here is this tool. Like, for example, here I am, a conservative woman, pro-life, thinking that modern feminism is insane. Right smack dab in the middle of, I live in Brooklyn, New York, right? Right smack dab in the middle of liberal America, where everybody around me is, is anti-abortion or just pro-abortion and, thinks that, and attends the Women's March, right? Here I am. But right here in front of me in my computer is a way to get in touch with other people all over the world who maybe think like I do. And it's not like we only have to interact with people who think like we do, but it can be isolating, right? To be sort of constantly the odd one out. And here is a vehicle for finding other like-minded people. Whoa, right? It should be that. It shouldn't be just like a bunch of people sort of patting each other on the back for, how they owned the other side, right? So if there are people that you really enjoy interacting with and you consistently enjoy interacting with them, consider making them your actual real live friend off of social media. What? I know. So, I have done this, right? My very dear friend, C.S. Johnson, right, who I've had on the show and everything. We met through Twitter. We had not known each other before that, and now we have met in real life, and our friendship exists off of social media. And this is true for a few other people that I've met on social media. And it's not like every single person that you have to become best friends with and text them all the time. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, if you think of each person that you're interacting with as the real person that they are, then and remember who they are, then you can have actual meaningful conversations with them either on Twitter or off Twitter. So another thing that's important, and I think that we sometimes forget this, is that an in-person conversation, even like a text message or like a direct message or a phone call or a video conversation, right, is not the same thing as Twitter replies that can be read by everyone, right? It's better. It's more intimate. It's more real. We don't stand around on street corners having our intimate conversation, our conversations with friends in a really loud voice and allow any random stranger to sort of walk up to us and join in. That's not how we interact with actual people, but it is how we interact on social media. And that's fine, right, to a point. But what if we were also sort of keeping our eye out for somebody that maybe could actually be a real friend? And if we find someone like that, it isn't sort of the culmination, it isn't the only way that we're going to interact is in public for everyone to see, because that actually isn't that's not how we interact with our friends all the time. So, I mean, obviously, and please listen carefully when I say this, obviously be safe, right? You should not just go from having a Twitter conversation to video chat someone or meet them at the coffee shop if you live nearby. No, you need to know that the person that you're dealing with is real, is really who they say they are, that they're not creepy, that, especially if you're a woman and they're a man, that they don't have some other nefarious plot in mind, right? You need to know all of that. So you need to take it very slowly and be very, very careful. But if you really enjoy someone or a group of people, find a way to take it off of Twitter, even just by making a group direct message, right? Or a group text or group chat or whatever. You guys are, almost all of you are younger than me. So, a group, whatever thing, that exists, because it isn't, because it isn't the same as when we interact in public. And that is rule number 5. Rule number 5 is social media is not a replacement for real life. So if you are someone who has most of their social interactions on social media, this is really important, because I know a lot of people do that, especially a lot of young people. I'm going to now reveal to you my age, but I mean, Facebook came into existence, I was already basically an adult, an older teenager, right? So I know that for people who have just sort of grown up with this as a sort of ubiquitous thing that exists in their lives, use it much more frequently than, for example, I do, or people who are my age or older than me do. And that is fine, because it is a tool for social interaction. And I mean, this is the other thing, particularly if you are shy or you feel socially awkward, then social media is really great for you, And I mean this, like, even though I just said this rule, I mean it, right? Because it allows you to kind of think before you speak, or to say things without kind of stuttering or stumbling over your words. You can just type them and put them out there in the world, and it feels much more like your authentic self than the self that sort of shows up in public social situations, and you're so awkward, and you're sort of like, that's not what I'm really like, but I can't, I can't get my words out, or I can't make eye contact, or whatever. Social media is great because you can form real connections to people without kind of feeling that awkwardness or that anxiety that comes from social interaction. But you have to make sure that it's not an end in and of itself in terms of your social life, right? So if you are shy, or if, like me, you don't live somewhere where there are people that you want to interact with. There are actually lots of people I want to interact with where I live, because you don't have to all agree all the time, but some people live in really small towns, or whatever. You should then use it in the way I was just describing, right? You meet people, you interact with them for a while until you feel comfortable with them, and they are comfortable, and they know you, and they're not, or you hope they're not going to sort of judge you for being socially awkward, and then you take your friendship off of the public sphere, right? So like, but especially if social media is your main source of socializing, this is particularly important for you, right? Because being with people in real life, or or at the very least being with them in a space where it's just you, or it's just this group, and like really weird random people can't see what you're saying, it's better than being with them online. Being face to face is better than typing, which I hate to say that too, because I'm one of those people that like text all the time. I hate talking on the phone. And, I like, video chatting is something I do with like my very closest friends and family. But even so, being with people in real life is better than typing. Talking is better than typing. Human connection is important for everyone, even the most introverted, socially awkward people among us. So what I'm trying to say is, you can't stop making an effort to be social just because you spend a lot of time on social media. It doesn't, it's not a replacement for your in-person social life. It's a tool. It's a way to meet people that you want to interact with. It can't be your only form of social interaction, because then, you turn off your computer and you look around and you're alone. And that is scary, and it's not good. So by all means, meet people via social media, by all means interact with them on social media, but people need other people. So, and just remember that, like, if you're having a conversation with someone and everyone else can read it, that's not the same thing as having this same conversation with them somewhere else, where it isn't a sort of public display of whatever it is that you're saying, right? So, this is a tool. It's a useful tool and a worthwhile tool, but that's what it is. It isn't an end in of itself. People need people. And those are my rules. Those are my 5 rules. See what happens. Follow them. See what happens. See if you're happier. If you're not, then don't listen to me anymore. But and report back. You can get in touch with me via my website, which is www.faithkmoore.com. And there's a little contact thing, and it goes right to me, and I always answer those. And if I don't answer you, in a couple days, try again, because maybe it went to spam. So, try this and see what happens, and get back to me. Or if you have questions about what I just said, get in touch with me. You can also get in touch with me via Twitter @FaithKMoore. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to this. I'm going to continue probably to be obsessed with Twitter and to keep thinking about this. And I also just want to say thank you to all of my Twitter followers, who are the best. And thanks for all the times that you've come to my defense in all kinds of ways. And thanks for all the awesome conversations and debates. I love it, and I love you, and I am just so appreciative of that. So thank you. I just have a couple reminders before I go. And I also want to say, if you're wondering, I'm not totally sure right now when the next episode will be, but I will keep you posted. And if you really want to be kept posted, you should sign up for my mailing list, which you can do by going to my website, faithkmoore.com. So just a couple reminders. Make sure to pick up a copy if you haven't already of Saving Cinderella. It's cool. It has all 5 stars on Amazon. And find the audiobook if you prefer that. Again, it's read by me, which was super fun. Speaking of that, I am also available to read your book and make it become an audiobook. You just have to go to ACX. You can Google ACX. It's Amazon's audiobook recording service, and search for me. There I will be, and you can get in touch with me there if you want me to record your book. And also, I have been having so much fun reading people's writing. I also do editing. I do proofreading, copy editing, full edits with comments, all kinds of editing, all kinds of writing. And I'm so geeky that I love it. I love editing. And my rates are very reasonable compared to other editors out there. So if you have a writing project that you are working on and you would like a second set of eyes and some feedback, please get in touch with me. You can use that contact form on my website to get in touch with me, and we can talk about how to move forward from there. And I just can't even tell you, I've been getting, the people who have contacted me already, and the work that I have read it's just been so fun to read it and do it. So you'd also be doing me a favor. So get in touch with me about that. So that's it for now for me. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I will see you next time. This has been Princess State of Mind. See you later. Bye.